Well, everybody, welcome back to the Trick Podcast. Let's go see this beautiful Friday, 3-day weekend. Man, for me, it feels like a 4-day weekend. Why does it feel that way? Because, oh yeah, I'm off today, duh. So I'm off today. I mean, I work Sunday, of course, but it feels like a 4-day weekend for me. I know that a 3-day weekend is plenty good for everyone. But man, a 4-day, I haven't had a 3-day weekend in about 3 months because I've been working weekends pretty much nonstop. But this is a little reprieve or a little break, I guess. Not reprieve, I guess reprieve. Little break before it gets busy again here in March and the rest of April too with Easter, as being a pastor and a church worker. But I wanted to talk about how I changed my life around, and I would say within, I don't know, maybe a year? I'm not sure. Whatever God did. Meaning, I don't know how long it took, but God did something amazing. And so I wanted to talk about that. But you make sure that before we get started that you leave me a comment. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe on this channel here on this sunny Friday morning. It is 58 degrees here in Long Beach, California. It's been raining all week. I did a podcast yesterday, speaking of that will be dropping here soon on my other channel with my work, with the church where I work. And that'll be awesome with an amazing guest, a man who I love and really admire. And so check that out, coming up soon. But as I said, I have my hat on here. I woke up early with my wife and prayed together as she did her thing. I sent her some flowers and some balloons. Don't tell her, to her job. I'm going to go and get some other goodies for our daughter, whose birthday is tomorrow. Happy birthday, my dear gatito. And so it's going to be a great weekend, man. I'm so excited. Sunday is amazing. I'm going to do one of my original songs that I wrote a while back that's kind of it fits with the LA fires and also with Ash Wednesday. So it's called, I've named it a few things. You Can Stand Tall, and then I think I now finally called it You Can Stand Tall, He Cares For You. So anyway, before we get going, let me check the audio here, make sure that it sounds awesome to us all, so that I'm not, sometimes this setup that I have has this really ugly buzz. So I just want to make sure that all is well with my soul. Let me see here. He cares for Yep, good. Awesome. So no buzz. Okay. But speaking of buzz, yeah, I'm singing this song on Sunday that I wrote, and I've been kind of debating whether I do it with the whole band or not. I'm not against doing it with the whole band. It's just more a matter of writing the chart, and I want to be professional, so I'm trying to actually score it, and the gear that I have, it's a little clunky. I use Sibelius. It's a great piece of software, but I guess maybe I don't know it as well yet, as much as I want to, so it's taking me longer than I want to make this chart for a very simple song. So I might just write it out on a piece of paper and just do it the old-fashioned way, chords and lyrics, and then play with the band, or I just do it by myself. I'm not sure yet. Not totally 1,000% sure, but I can't wait. Look forward to that. The service is live stream, and so if you want to go back to my channel, maybe I'll even post it here after Sunday. So, but I wanted to talk about how I changed my life around, and because it really is fascinating how different and yet how similar my life is right now. I was listening to a podcast. I love listening to podcasts of, I think her name is Annie Wood, or her podcast is called Annie Wood. Excuse me. And she was on this podcast called Trash Tuesday, and it wasn't trashy, but I guess that's what they called it. It's funny. 3 ladies talking about life and stuff. And then she left the podcast to go back to stand up and to do her own podcast and blah, blah, blah. And she's maybe in her early 40s. She's a young lady, young woman. But it got me thinking about how you have to change your life around. I don't know if you have to, but life keeps changing. And we all have a response, whether to adjust and to grow and to evolve and to follow Jesus into the new adventure, or to remain bitter and angry and stuck or depressed or anxious or drink or lose it all, including your mind. By the way, I keep trying to say less. I was listening to the podcast yesterday that I did. I'm so surprised how often I still do ums, even though I've been podcasting now for 20 years and being a public speaker my whole life. But anyway, something I'm working on. And so, thinking about that, it got me going. It let me go. I began to go back to, this is February of 25. Let's go back to January of 2023. Yes. And the reason why I want to share this, by the way, do you love my background? Isn't it awesome? I brought it back. I don't have my Goso hat because it pokes me and then it hits against this thing back here, and I miss my Goso hat though. Maybe I'll bring it up the other day or someday. But anyway, so I was thinking about that and thinking about why I want to share this, and the reason is because, as I said, sometimes we get stuck. And like this lady leaving her podcast, which was her other podcast, which was her main source of income, but now she's believing in herself, and leaving it all behind basically to start her own thing and to go back to what she loves. And then she was talking about how in 2015 or something, she was drinking heavily every day, like blacking out every night after doing her stand-up. And then one night she ended up, I guess she was so drunk that she dropped all her jokes and someone found them. And then some guy was buying her drinks and took her home, and she woke up the next day saying, "What am I doing with my life? What a disaster." And then she went into AA and changed her life around. It's been, I think, 10 years since then. But then she got in this other podcast, and then she kind of began to feel like, this is still not what I'm looking for, right? And so she made this move. And it got me thinking about how similar that is to what I've been through. Not the blacking out, but definitely those moments where you think, this is not what I want to be doing with my life. And to inspire you to maybe wake up and to not fall asleep at the wheel of your own life, because we're running out of time. All of us are. Whatever age, whatever season you're in, you could be in your teens, 20s, 50s, 70s, 90s. We are all needing to pursue our purpose. And so I grew up always loving music and loving Jesus, loving the church. I believe that I've been called to ministry since I was born. I didn't realize that till maybe in my 20s. But ever since I saw my dad sing and play, and when we'd go to church, and I got baptized when I was, I think, 11, back in Nicaragua, I've always loved the church, the environment, the gathering, the community coming together, worshiping, hearing the word of God, hanging out with people you love, and then eventually going to Bible studies and getting to know people, going to a Christian school that I love so much. And then in my 20s, I got hired as a pastor. I became a pastor, went to seminary, became a worship pastor, then a senior pastor, then an administrator, church administrator, and then back to now being a worship pastor. And still, there's my ums, so I'm trying to work on that. And still loving the Word of God. And I'm not sure if I want to be a senior pastor again, maybe, but I think being a teaching pastor or a associate pastor would be, I think, the next thing for me, which is I almost became. I had a few opportunities, maybe even a lead pastor, I'm not sure. And I had a few opportunities, but anyway, so going back to, that's a little bit of my history, right? And if you know me, you know that that's what I've been about my whole life. Music, of course, my own songs, podcasting, media, I love all this stuff. Together with my beautiful wife of 30 years, Happy Valentine's, my beautiful wife. Happy love right there, Goso love. And then our beautiful family, our 3 adult kids who love Jesus, and all are on their way to do great things for God. And so I feel very successful, but it wasn't always that way in the last few years. I would say that my hit bottom experience was when I was at Bell Gardens High School, maybe a couple of things, and I think I tore my meniscus. I think I have a torn ligament. That was about 2 years ago. I was running track with the kids as a sub. I was subbing mostly at Bell Gardens High School, which I love, by the way. I love that experience. I have nothing bad to say about it. But then one day I went to work on a Monday morning, and nobody was at the school. There was no one at school. This is like a school of 2,000 kids. Nobody was around. And I thought, what's going on? I checked my email, no phone calls, nothing. Well, there was one girl in one of my classes, And I asked her, and she said, "Well, you haven't watched a TikTok?" There was this guy, ex gangbanger, that went to that school a year or two before. What had threatened to shoot up the school that morning. I don't know if I can say this on YouTube. So hopefully, anyway, and so that's why everybody didn't show up, and I felt so. Not only was I scared, of course, but I felt so unprotected by the system of school and my subbing agency and the whole thing. I thought, why didn't anyone tell me to, not that I wouldn't have gone to work, but maybe, again, I'm just a sub. I'm not even a paid staff member at this school, but nobody told me anything. And I felt so afraid, exposed, unprotected, like my life could be in danger, not just mine, but all the staff, all the kids, right? They eventually caught the guy with guns in his trunk the next day or maybe that afternoon. And I even called my subbing agency, and they said, "Oh, they said that it wasn't a real threat, and so we can't pay you for that day." So I went home, and so it was a big mess. And I thought, not only was it a horrible experience to not have the support, but I thought, what am I doing here? I love the kids. I love teaching. I love math. I love all the things that I was doing. Nothing against it, and even the violence or those things. I mean, that's part of church as well. I mean, you have threats, and maybe not quite that drastic, but it was just a wake-up call to think, what, this is not me. This isn't the system that I want to be a part of. My wife's a principal. My mom was a principal, so we love education. I have master's degrees. All our kids have graduate degrees, so I love public school and all that stuff. Public school, it's not about that for me. We both love being in the public school system, to be a light. And I was able to be a light that day to a few of the kids. But anyway, that got me thinking, right? And I thought, this is not me. This is not where I'm supposed to be. If I'm going to be, quote, suffering, I want to suffer for Jesus in the way that I'm equipped to do. My wife loves the school system, and that's where she is Jesus. And so that was, I think, when was that? Maybe May or April of 23. Yeah. So then after that, I was already feeling a lot of turmoil in my body. And as the book says, the body keeps a score. And that's what this lady, back to this podcast, was talking about, how her drinking and her blacking out was all a reflection of what was happening inside, as it usually is, right? And so I began to experience all kinds of stomach issues. I mean, all kinds of stuff. Wow. All related to my anxious thoughts and all that stuff. For maybe a year. I would say from June of that year, 23, till June of last year. Yeah, June, July. A good year, maybe a year plus. And then in that time span, Rochelle also went through a challenging thing at her job. I had lost my job as the lead pastor right before subbing, and that's why I was subbing. And then her father passed away, who was my mentor, a father figure to me, in light of my own loss of my father 20 years ago. Before that, we had lost Rochelle's mom, who also was a significant person in my life. Then we lost our dog of 12 years. I think it was that same June. Then our son, who's at UCSB, he went through some challenging times that summer as well. And we went through that with him. And it was just and then my mom, I remember last year, right? This was just last year. She went through some stomach issues, because I think we're related in terms of that, in our bodies, how they respond to stress and anxious thoughts. And so it was just a very dark time for me, very dark, and not dark as in like hopeless, but definitely anxious, worry filled. I kept praying, finding God, calling out to Jesus. And I remember one night, maybe even this year, no, not this year, maybe at the end of last year, maybe even November or so. Oh yeah, because on top of that, just like in August or so, then my wife had a mole on her arm that had some melanoma, some cancerous cells. And so that was a big 6 month ordeal that she had to go through of getting that removed and checked and all these things and body scans. And by the grace of God, she's good and she never has to go back to all that stuff. But during that season, those 6 months, my goodness, it was as if I was saying to God, Lord, you can't do this. Like, this is not going to work. This is not where I want to be. Like, you can't allow my wife to go through this. And as I said, thankfully, all is well. But that season of 24 going back into 23 had so much turmoil. And at the same time, though, as I was just fighting with God like Jacob and just saying, Lord, I want you, I need you, make me brave, Lord Jesus. I don't want to be wondering or worrying anymore. I want to trust you. And so, and as always, God was there. And so I remember in August of 23, so a year and a half ago, I found this church because I was still subbing in Costa Mesa, and they needed a math teacher. And so I was there for 3 months. And then after that, they had a position in worship. And so I've been there now a year. But even that was a challenging season because the church was going through so much. And I was kind of in the middle of just watching all this stuff. And it was very unsettling for me to see so much happening around me that I had nothing to do with. But it just affected me, of course. And so even that wasn't very stable emotionally for me, even though it was great to have a job again, especially at a church. And so God began to kind of speak to me again and say, son, I think this is the way forward. And I was wrestling with God because before this church that I'm at, I had Cottonwood Church, which many of you know. They had interviewed me, the whole 3-month interview process. I was one of 2 finalists to be their discipleship pastor. And it would have been a dream job. And then they canceled the position or whatever. They started all over again. And I was very, very disappointed. I thought, man, if that had happened, I would have been so happy to be at this amazing church that I love so much, just 10 minutes from my house, that I've been a part of for so many years and love their worship and love Bayless and his preaching and the whole thing. But, ironically, I wasn't devastated. I thought, okay, Lord, you must have something better in place. And then before that, I also was a part of the search, or I was a candidate to be a senior pastor at a church here in the area. And they were pursuing me. But I actually opted out. After the last few conversations that we had, I said, I don't think I'm the right guy. There were just some things that were going back and forth that didn't fit who I am. And then there were other things, random things, where I thought, okay, maybe this way, maybe that, and maybe this. And so finally, as I said, I landed here in Costa Mesa. And it was a turbulent start with so much happening at the church. But then slowly, God began to show me himself in clarity. And so I enjoyed teaching math. I knew that wasn't my jam, although I love math and I love students, and I still help out a few students with math and stuff as a tutor. But as I began to play and lead worship again, which I hadn't done in maybe 10 years, maybe longer, I began to, again, I've always been a worship pastor and a senior pastor, I began to find my way again. And even though I wasn't teaching and preaching, I began to find my way, as I said. And God began to speak to me and to say, son, this is the way forward. Trust me. Trust me. And so I kept trusting God. And I kept driving out there to Costa Mesa and, being a new person, all the stuff that goes with being new, learning the new systems and cultures and church cultures and all these things. And it was hard at first, as any new job is, but soon I began to find my footing and enjoy what I was doing, serving God, serving that community, hanging out with the students, hanging out with the kids, going to volleyball games and basketball games, supporting the school. And this is a very beautiful connection that this church has with the school. They're very tied. I became best friends with the principal of the school, who hired me as a sub a year and a half ago. So he was the first one that I met. And that was such a beautiful blessing. I just saw him yesterday, and I'm so thankful for this man. began to get to know the staff, etc. Began to get to know the people of the church, and as I said, I even interviewed yesterday. Yesterday, I interviewed one of the seniors, meaning he's an elder gentleman and his wife who've become great friends to Rochelle and I. So we did a podcast together, so that'll be dropping here soon. So that whole year, I've been there now a year plus, has been challenging because, as I said, the church has been going through so much. Things seem to be improving, and I've been finding my way, my footing. But all that to say that I find myself now in February of 25, in many ways starting all over again, but I feel more at peace with myself, with who I am. And this church that I'm at is a part of that, but really it goes beyond a job or one place. It goes to, as usual, right, me trusting in God. Because even when Rochelle was going through her stuff, that was difficult for me, but I learned to trust God even more in a deeper way now with my wife going through some challenges. I had been through some stuff, my father-in-law, blah, blah, all these things. But now it was the woman that I love the most in my life, the woman that I love with my whole life. And so God taught me so much about resilience and about prayer and about trusting God, also my weaknesses. And yet going out and reaching out to friends, this principal, a lot of the teachers' friends. And so I learned so much about myself and how faithful God is, and how sometimes it does feel like God is far and maybe silent. But even when I felt like he was distant, I remember going on walks with my dog, because we got a new dog. Roxy is her name. She's out there. Just fed her this morning, took her for a walk last night. But as I was walking her, I don't know, 6 months ago or so, I remember one night crying just as I was walking through the neighborhood, maybe at 8 p.m. or something, and singing that song by Amanda Cook, You Make Me Brave. And I kept saying, God, make me brave. I don't feel brave. I am not a brave person. How can you do this? How can you allow this? Why my wife? Why this and that and the other? Why all these things, right? Woe is me. But in the middle of all that, I kept saying, Lord, make me brave. I believe that song says that he's for me, not against me. I kept saying, Lord, I know you're not against me. It feels like you are, like all this stuff, right? And what's next? And more bad news. And okay, now what's going to happen? But instead, I knew that God was making me brave through his presence, through that wrestling and through that pain and crying out to God. My son, I remember, he joined a church, which is a big prayer for us, because UCSB can be a pretty lost place, like most universities. And he was working and doing well in school, but then he did have to change majors, so there were some things that he had to go through. But as Rochelle and I were praying, he found a church in a small group, and he's hanging out with friends from church, and beautiful things, right, that any father longs for. Our daughters have been doing well. They go to Rock Harbor, to the Garden, which is a part of Rock Harbor here in the area. And so my mom went through some stuff, health things, but then she had all these tests, and God spared her, and all is well with my mom as well. So thankful for her. But you're kind of there thinking, hello, by the way, Leona and Black Key Music. Wonderful to have you guys on Instagram. Thank you for being here. But talking about how God changed my life and how my life has been turned around these last 2 years or so, a year and a half. And so I was talking to God about all this stuff, and he began to make me stronger, to make me brave. And we got to this year now, January, February. As I said, my son is now in this Bible study at UCSB, which is such a answer to prayer. And we're still praying, of course, when he graduates, that he will then find his way in terms of career and his next steps in terms of whatever he may want to do, whatever God is leading him to do. He is maybe considering becoming a teacher. He's graduating with a degree in communications or linguistics, I believe. And so he loves communicating. He loves helping people. So that might be a way forward for him. We will see. But this year, it's almost like all my dreams are coming back online. Like all my dreams are coming true. You know how you go through long seasons when you feel like your dreams are just dead, like your dreams will never come true? That's how it felt for the last year and a half. And then this year, I've started to lead the way that I used to when I was a senior pastor, and to build teams and to openly talk and gather groups and communicate and help people and try to solve problems, not just survive, not just be in survival mode, but be more in like proactive mode, not just reactive. And so, and part of that is just, being in my second year at work. That's what happens. But even engaging more with my family, during that really tough time, I would come home every night and just lay in bed and just watch Netflix for maybe months. And that was just the only thing I could do to kind of cope and to manage my own thoughts and feelings and worry. Now I come home and I'm exhausted, but just from work, normal tiredness. And I'm out there and hanging out with my wife and with our girls and helping them through things and engaging them and watching the Lakers together and celebrating Valentine's Day, even just sending my wife flowers. I don't think I did that last year. I always do. And her birthday and all these things, celebrating. I'm finally coming back to celebrating her birthday just last month, and now Valentine's, our daughter's birthday tomorrow, our son's birthday in July, in August, my birthday in April. Looking forward to Easter, not just like, oh, I have to do this and that, but like, thank you, Lord, for what you're doing. And my life and my feelings and my thoughts and my real me is coming back slowly. And that's such a blessing. And I remember a mentor of mine after after my church experience ended as a senior pastor in 2021? Yes. That it would take me 2 years. It took me 4 years to get over. Maybe not that experience, but just that plus this and that plus. It took me 4 years. It's taken me 4 years. I left my church in Bellflower, I think it was February of 21, was it? Yeah. It was 4 years No, it was August the 13th, I remember. So it'll be 4 years here in August. And it's taken me that long, not just, as I said, to recover post-church, but I think post all these things, because after that church experience, then all this other stuff happened. And so it takes time. It takes time to be yourself again. Even I was talking about this song that I wrote a few years ago. I'm performing it this Sunday. Even that is a sign of me gaining my confidence again, to not just do worship songs, but to do my original songs and to have not the confidence, I'm a very confident person, but to kind of be in that headspace to say, yeah, I'm ready to do that song and to practice it and to show it this and do all the prep work and let's do this. And I did my original song last Easter, one of my songs. And so, like I said, it's not like nothing has been going well. I mean, there's always life, even in the desert. But this feels a little bit different. Yesterday I did the podcast. As I said, even just simple but yet beautiful things, like sending my wife flowers today, is a sign of my own maybe garden of my life coming back. And that's exciting to me. I even I have our neighbors here who are going through some stuff. And yesterday or a few days ago, I saw them, this young couple. And I really wanted to go to them and say, hey, my wife knows them really well and has been blessing them for years. And I felt in my heart and in my body the desire to reach out and say, hey, I'm here for you guys, as an older man, as an older couple, to walk with you guys as husbands or couples, whatever it may be, parents. Not only that, but then I don't want to overdo it either, because what my therapist is saying to me always, saying, don't overdo it, because that's what happens to me when I feel better. And so so on maybe Monday this week, there's a man who's a parent of one of the kids, and his wife sings with us on Sundays. And so I know her and I know the kids because I was her teacher for those 3 months, and I've been with them now for a couple of years. And I saw the husband, who I really enjoy. I've always enjoyed him ever since I met him a year ago or so. But I have never felt anything pastoral to serve him or anything like that. I was just, like I said, in survival mode. But then this week I saw him, his name is Brian, and I didn't say to him, but I thought it in my head and it came from a real place. I said, "Hey, Brian, your son's over here." But it was raining, so it must have been just a couple days ago. And so I told him where his son was. And then in my heart, the Holy Spirit was saying, invite him to a Bible study. And I'm going to do it. Like I said, I don't want to overdo and do a million things, because then that's when I crash and burn again. But I'm praying, and I have a Bible study that I do with the band on Zoom on Sundays once a quarter. And it's coming up again. And so I am going to invite him. That's what I'm going to do. Whether it's to that study or maybe just getting to know him, having a conversation, whatever. But not introducing him to Jesus. He loves the Lord, but to introduce myself to him and to talk to him and to engage life and to engage him. To pastor, basically, to pastor. And these are all beautiful things that I can see coming back online for me. After this very, like I said, very kind of stormy season these last 2-3 years, maybe even 4 years. So it's amazing how God, now here's some things that have fallen by the wayside. I am not recording as much with different artists like I was. I had maybe 10 artists or so a couple years ago that would come through the studio. Now I have 1 or 2. I'm not making as many beats as I was making a couple years ago. I was making beats every day. I still have them all, but it seems like I'm kind of moving away from that per se, some. And what else am I kind of leaving behind? I don't know. Maybe, I'm not sure. Well, and some things I still haven't done. Working out is one of them. Taking care of my body, my diet. I'm still not at that place of being healthy physically. I am walking our dog every night pretty much. And I am eating less, but I still, obviously I know my body, right? We all know our bodies. I don't have the discipline at this point. I did look online for a treadmill, and so I may do that, blah, blah, blah. So I also have some knee issues, like I mentioned, that are kind of keeping me a little bit, kind of using that as an excuse. But I think that's just an excuse. And again, I'm not going to do everything all at once, right? We have to pace ourselves and be kind. But I feel like, we painted the house. I think it was in December. And so that was a huge thing, just to be a part of that and talk to the guys. And of course, Rochelle and the girls had a lot to do with a lot of stuff, picking the colors. That looks beautiful, by the way. But I think even maybe getting a new driveway or getting a new roof, things that we need, boring stuff, but very important things for a man especially to lead and to care for his family and his home. I did fix a leak that we had a few months ago, so that's taken care of. Just things like that. I mean, even just fixing the curtains in the front in the living room that broken off the wall. I fixed that. I mean, dumb things, right? But when you are going through a storm, those things become so difficult. And that's where I was. I was just, like I said, doing what I could to survive and bring home the bacon and provide for my family. But now these things seem to be coming back online. These more, I would say, basic but very important things like flowers and like fixing the curtain rod. And so it's exciting. I'm not like saying, oh, wow, life is perfect. I don't think that's the point. But there is a sense of it as well with my soul. And trusting in God, calling out to Him, hitting bottom, you could say, those couple of times that I mentioned. All those things are invitations from the Holy Spirit to say, will you trust me? I read a quote that says that ambition always requires pain. Ambition meaning anyone that wants more of themselves, more out of life, in whatever area, music, money, you want to master a skill, you want to find the woman or the man of your dreams, you want to buy your own house, you want to grow in your relationship with God. Whatever ambition that we have, whatever called purpose that we have in our lives requires pain. And I must say, I used to run away from pain, and I'm not running towards it right now, but I've become, I guess, more accepting of pain and difficulty and seeing how God does show up in the middle of that. Maybe the last thing I'll say is talking to Tom yesterday, who I interviewed for the podcast. conversation, he was saying that he dealt with, I think it was 3 forms of cancer has dealt with that over the last maybe 10, 15 years. He's now in his 80s, I believe. But he was joking with his doctor the other day that if it comes back, he'll be 94. So the doctor was saying, well, you won't have to deal with that then. Who cares, right? And Tom was saying, I got that. I got this. I'll deal with that if that happens. And I'll make the changes and I'll have the surgeries. And it was amazing to hear him talk this way. And then this one quote that I also put on a reel, he was saying how every time the disease would morph or come back, that he would feel more and more at peace, more and more happy. And I thought, why? And he said, because I knew God was with me. Because I knew God was there. How amazing. And as I was driving home in the rain yesterday, it was pouring rain, just listening to this reel of Tom saying that. And I just heard that for like an hour. It took me an hour, it's just raining so hard. I think for the whole hour, I listened to that 55-second clip like 1,000 times. And it was just God speaking to me and just pouring his truth over me through this beautiful 80-year-old man, saying, David, no matter if you go through this once or this twice or 3 times or 5 times or 10 times or whatever, you can be content and more happy because you know God has it. I want nothing else to ever happen to me. I don't want anybody to die, to get sick. I don't want any storms or any crazy political things, or I want everything from here on out to be perfect. That's not real, right? In this world, you will face many trials, but be of good courage. I am with you. I am with you, no matter how many times you experience pain and difficulty. And there is pain in the night, Psalm 30, but gozo, right? Where's my gozo bell right here? Gozo bell right there. Gozo comes in the morning. And that's what I think Tom was saying. Yeah. 3 times of dealing with lymphoma, I think it was. And I don't know where else he had the cancer and all these things that he dealt with. That stuff is no fun, but joy comes in the morning. That's why he, quote, felt happier and more at ease every time these waves would come, because he knew God was with him. And I don't want anybody, as I said, to die. I don't want my dog Roxy to die. I want everybody to just stay the same. I know that's not real. I will die, dogs die, parents die, things happen, bad things happen. But in the middle of that, I am learning to know that it is well with my soul if God is with me. Well, if I hang on to God, is what I meant to say. And because he is with me, I know that I can, like the song says, he lives, I'm happy he lives. And God is worth something. And he lives within my heart. And how do I know that he lives? Because he lives within my heart. I think that's what the hymn says. And the point of that hymn, the point what I'm trying to make is that how do I know that it'll be well with my soul, even though I will experience loss and pain, and we all will deal with loss and pain for the rest of our lives, is because he lives within my heart. And beautiful Valentine's Day story of the love of God, of the love of life, of the love of my beautiful wife, of the love that I have for you, for the listener, whoever it may be, 1, 2 people. Doesn't matter to me. Even that has been just not important to me. Instead, I want to be a man who can be an example of resilience, of strength, of endurance, and of hanging on to Jesus no matter what. And for some people, what I've been through is nothing. I live a charmed life, and I have. But for others and for myself, it's been a ton of stuff, normal stuff, as life happens. And I am thankful. I'm so thankful that I'm actually going to go here in a few minutes to go buy a cake for our daughter. Because, as I said, tomorrow is her birthday. And you may think, oh, that's just normal stuff. But to me, in light of this last year where I wasn't in the mental and emotional frame of mind to even do that, to go and buy flowers for my wife and buy our daughter a cake and fix things is a joy, because it shows me that I am trusting God that much more. And so I'm going to go do that. So again, thank you for being here. If you like this content and if you like this channel, like, comment, subscribe. If you would like my coaching, I do coach on the side. Please let me know. Email me, text me, leave me a comment, and I would love to walk you through the things that I'm learning. And from a pastoral perspective, as well as I have taken many life coaching classes, and I can offer you I have different packages that I offer: one-on-one, group coaching, Zoom, in person, FaceTime, whatever you want. So I can help you in your own goals, in your own life. Thanks again for being here, and I'll see you next time. Adios. Adios.